I want to ask what will seem to be, to everybody, maybe including you, an obvious question, but I'll ask it anyway, which is why China?
So Chinese travelers are the biggest spender on international tourism. It's at this point double or triple that of the United States or Germany, which is number 2 and 3 respectively. So it's a huge outbound market. So that alone is a reason to prioritize it.
Now, to be clear, outbound market means Chinese people leaving China for tourism.
That's right. That's right. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars just on that, making them number 1. The second part, though, is this is a marketplace network effects business, and so actually more than 50% of our travelers going to destinations in Asia are coming from China. And so by attracting Chinese guests from China, we're actually helping to grow our business in Japan, in Thailand, throughout Asia. And so it's a critical complement to our success more broadly in Asia.
So take a moment and give us an overview of the business metrics of your China business specifically.
Well, we really break it out into 2 parts. There's the outbound part and there's the domestic part, and we've really sequenced them that way, first focusing on the outbound part. To date, we've had about 8.6 million guests use Airbnb to go abroad from China since we've started. Domestically, we have 120,000 homes in China. We've had about 2.25 million guests stay in those homes in the last year, 1 million just in Q3 alone. That has grown about 268% year over year over this past year.
In the United States, when Airbnb started, it was not obvious what Airbnb was. The company had to do a fair amount of education how to do Airbnb, starting with young people, obviously. Was there a similar challenge in China, or was the fact that it existed already, did that make it easier?
No, I think there definitely is a real kind of education curve and kind of proving of the concept. It does require a great deal of trust to engage in this. It's not just knowing what it is, but it's also hearing positive testimony from friends and family. And so it does take a while to get that flywheel going. Frankly, we weren't sure it was going to work here. It wasn't until the end of 2013 that we decided to make the leap. We had certainly heard all the stories from other tech companies about how hard it is to succeed in China. And so we just we weren't sure we should make it a priority, whether we should maybe focus on other things that were more straightforward. But we took the leap in 2014, initially focusing on outbound. We thought that plays to our strength. No local company can do that. But what we've seen is organically a very robust domestic business develop, particularly in the last 2 years. Basically what happens is Chinese travelers go abroad, they experience Airbnb that way, they have a favorable experience, they come back to China, and oftentimes the guests become hosts. This is a C2C model primarily.
Consumer to consumer.
Consumer to consumer. And so the consumer guest can become the consumer host. And so organically, these 120,000 homes across China have basically materialized over the last 2 years. I just shared the stat that in Q3 we had 1 million guests stay in China. 3 years ago, that number was just 10,000. So that's a 100x increase in the last 3 years for Airbnb domestically in China.